Hello and welcome to Love and the Planets, and this is the week of June 26th, and I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So quite an interesting week, really, Armand, isn't it? It's a very mercurial week. Really, Mercury kind of dominates the scene, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And also there's, a few transits with Mars, but generally the theme for the week is really communication.
It is, but communication may be a bit of a problem. We have Mercury, first of all, is out of bounds. That is, he's beyond the place in the sky where the sun goes. And planets tend to act a little erratic when they're out of bounds. Mercury's out of bounds, and Mars is also out of bounds, although he's coming back in soon. So we're dealing with an extra prickly kind of Mercury. We may have been seeing the sort of snafus that happened with Mercury retrograde over the last couple of weeks because of him being out of bounds. And this week he squares Jupiter. First of all, Mercury's in Cancer, where it's a very emotional tone to things. He squares Jupiter. He's making a lot of aspects this week. So I feel that communication is going to be the theme. Saying what you want to say, not saying too much, not exploding when you say it is going to be the challenge.
And I think it's almost like I would divide the week up in two sections. At the beginning of the week, there could be a lot of confusion around because the same time that he's squaring Jupiter, which you mentioned in Libra, he's also trining Neptune in Pisces. So here we have a Mercury in water floating underwater. And the way I would describe it is it's almost like we're all in a swimming pool and we're trying to communicate with each other. So the kind of usual facility we might have with words isn't likely to work. So we're kind of using our hands, we're using our expression, we're using lots of other things. Very creative week, I might say, for people out there who are artists and writers and musicians. This might be a very good week to be creative. But in terms of relationship dynamics, where there could be emotions floating around, certainly I think there's a lot of room for miscommunication the first half of the week. And then the second half of the week, we go into maybe what you were mentioning, that potential aggressiveness.
Yeah, we start out with the moon in Leo, and it's waxing. It's still a very new moon, but it's a little bit, that's very good for creativity. I think that part of the week, that's the kind of incubation phase with things. And also, too, with feelings and matters of the heart, too. It's kind of an incubation phase. Then the moon at midweek goes into Virgo. We do have some very explosive energy on the one hand, and then that's kind of like the Virgo moon will sort of try to sort it out. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. Although it's going to be a real challenge, and I think the miscommunication, that sort of in the moment type of thing is a big deal. And then later in the week, the moon goes into Libra, and keeping balance, well, it's usually pretty tough for the Libra moon, what with aspecting Uranus and Pluto. And I think this is the first quarter moon. It's very active, and it's going to be quite impulsive with Mars opposite Pluto.
Also, of course, we've got Mercury opposite Pluto on the Thursday. So, that's certainly kind of, a time where I think it's not going to be easy to just be superficial. I think we're really going to want, if we have a conversation with somebody or communicate with loved ones, we're going to want to go to the depths. We're going to want to get to the absolute truth. So we're not going to settle for anything else. Now, what do you think, Armand, about this Venus in Taurus quincunx Saturn in Sag on the Wednesday, just before the Mercury opposing Pluto?
Well, with the Mercury opposing Pluto, that is going to be the manifestation. That's how it's going to come out, with maybe some harsh emotional words and things like that. The Venus-Jupiter aspect sets that up. Venus in Taurus wants to enjoy itself. It's in the moment. It's what's happening now, what feels good. Saturn in Sagittarius is, what do we believe? What's going on? What's the right thing to do? And so we might really feel some tensions between, what we want and what we feel we should do, or what we want and what others feel we should do, or what others want and what we feel they should do, because it goes every which way. So, there could be, and this is a quincunx, so it's a very subtle tension. It's kind of like, I'm not so happy with this, but not necessarily, being able to fully articulate why. And then, of course, the Mercury aspects come in and sort of maybe get you to sort of push it out there in some emotional way. I would be very careful around midweek. Also, too, the Virgo moon, great for so many things, helps sort things out around this time. But throw it back the other way, and the Virgo moon can also get you a little bit myopic, especially opposite Neptune. It can take a small little grain and, turn it into a pearl or a big old blister, so you can get hung up on a little detail. What did you mean by that when you said that? I'm not happy with what you said just there. Do you mean to imply that? So I figure that things can kind of get, a little bit out of hand on Wednesday, Thursday.
Talking about pearls, Armand, I read somewhere some article, I think it was the Gottmans maybe, or one of those couples who do a lot of relationship works, and they were saying, one of the things for successful relationships is sometimes to let things go. You don't have to discuss everything, you do not have to argue everything, and you do not have to dissect everything. So that might be something to keep in mind with that Virgo moon, that just there are some pearls that we can just put away somewhere, chuck out the window, really.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the end of the week, we've got this Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto in Capricorn. Now, that to me feels like that's the day where we really need to be aware of not really exploding in a row, because Mars, Pluto has a tendency to potentially be somewhat explosive. And even though it's a Mars in Cancer, so it's kind of a very soft Mars, it's not an aggressive Mars, very much a Mars oriented towards, taking care of family and taking care of self and, people we love. But when it opposes Pluto, there's a lot of tension there, and it becomes also a little dogmatic, a little fixed. And so, following on, if we don't throw those pearls out the window, we might then kind of use them to chuck them at each other on the Sunday, which is not really good at all.
I think so. Mars in Cancer is very protective, me and mine, and opposed by Pluto, there can be that sort of, it's a defensiveness. And it's an active defensiveness. And I think it's going to play out on levels that are, more on the collective level in many ways. But when it comes to, what we're feeling personally, it can very much be, I think, a matter of, safety and security. It's about us. And is there is there a threat to us? And where is it coming from? And how are we going to deal with it? It's a challenging aspect at every single level.
I think it's quite a potentially fearful aspect, and that could be reinforced when the moon goes into Scorpio later that day. So Sunday really is a day to kind of really just be very conscious of how we are and not to project our kind of moods and stuff onto, our loved ones, because there's really a lot going on. As you say, this could be playing out in the collective. And of course, there's a lot happening in the collective at the moment. So really to, as we've said before, try not to let that intrude too much on our relationships, with our significant others and with all the people around us.
Well, I don't know if we have a very upbeat message for the week.
Well, maybe earlier in the week. Yeah, maybe, earlier in the week, around Tuesday, maybe to daydream a little together, do something, maybe watch a nice movie or something. But certainly by the weekend, I think maybe, I always go back to, maybe it's my Virgo ascendant, but time in nature is really good. Maybe on Sunday, go for a nice walk somewhere beautiful. There's something kind of soothing about nature, and that I think helps us to deal with everything else that's going on at the moment.
It's always good advice.
See you next week, Armand.
Bye-bye, Margaret.
Bye-bye.